Grimm's Fairy Tales. Hansel and Gretel, written by Sylvia Pirata, illustrated by Cecilia Johansson. Check out the link in the description down below to download the app or buy the book. Once there was a woodcutter who had 2 children, a boy called Hansel and a girl called Gretel. He loved them very much, but his wife, their stepmother, didn't like them at all. One winter, the cold weather ruined the crops and everyone in the land was going hungry. "Why don't we take Hansel and Gretel into the deep forest and leave them there?" suggested his wife one night. "That'll be 2 less mouths to feed." The woodcutter was horrified. What a thing to suggest! But his wife went on arguing and badgering until he said yes. The poor man went to bed with a great sadness in his heart. Hansel and Gretel were still awake because their tummies were rumbling with hunger. They heard every single word the cruel stepmother said. Hansel comforted Gretel and said, "Don't worry, we'll find a way back somehow." When the house was quiet, Hansel crept downstairs to the garden and filled his pockets with lots of tiny white stones. The next morning, the 4 set off towards the forest in front of the woodcutter's wife. Then the woodcutter who held hands with Gretel. Last of all comes Hansel, dropping the white stones from his pockets as he walked. When they reached the middle of the forest, the woodcutter built a fire and settled his children down beside it. "Now, rest, my little ones," he said. "Your stepmother and I are going to chop some wood." Hansel and Gretel sat by the fire and ate their lunch. They were not at all scared. They could hear their father chopping wood nearby. After a while, they fell asleep. When they woke, it was dark and nobody was there. Gretel trembled. "Look, there are my stones shining in the moonlight," said Hansel, and they followed the trail of pebbles all the way back home. The stepmother was furious, but the woodcutter hugged his children close. Food was still scarce, so a short time later the stepmother started to complain again. Once more the woodcutter didn't want to let his children go, but his wife wore him down. When the lights were out, Hansel crept downstairs once more to fetch some stones, but this time his stepmother had locked the door. Hansel returned to bed with empty pockets. In the morning, the children were given a hunk of bread and led to the forest. Hansel, not having any stones, left a trail of breadcrumbs behind him instead. The children helped their father light a fire, and before long they fell asleep. When they woke up, it was dark, and the owls were hooting. Their parents had left. "Don't worry, Gretel," said Hansel. "We'll follow the trail of breadcrumbs to get home." But the birds had eaten all of the bread. There was no trail. The children were completely lost. All night long they wandered through the forest until they came to a little cottage. What a delicious house it was! The walls were made of gingerbread, and the roof of cake and chocolate, and the window pans of spun sugar. Hansel tore off a part of the roof, while Gretel broke a piece of the window pane. "Who's nibbling at my house?" someone called, and an old woman came out. "Why, it is 2 hungry children," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Come inside, and I'll make you a proper meal." Hansel and Gretel followed the old woman into the house. The old woman might have looked harmless, but she was really a wicked witch. After the meal, she suggested Hansel and Gretel have a little sleep. Her bed looked so comfortable. The 2 of them climbed in. Early next morning, the witch dragged Hansel out of the bed and locked him in a cage. Then she kicked Gretel awake and said, "Light the fire, child. We're making some porridge to fatten up your brother. When he's nice and plump, I shall roast him up and eat him." Gretel was given only scrapes to eat, while Hansel was fed all kinds of delicious food. Every day, the witch went up to the cage and said, "Stretch out your finger, you little brat. Let's see if my food is making you fat." Hansel, who knew the witch could not see very well, would stick a chicken bone through the bars. "Pah!" grumped the witch. "Still not plump enough." After 4 weeks, the witch got tired of waiting. "Gretel," she called, "check the oven, see if it's hot enough." "Aha," thought Gretel. "She means to lock me in the oven and cook me." So she said, "But how do I get in to check?" "For goodness sake," snapped the witch, "you must climb in like this." And then she got down on all fours to show Gretel. Gretel gave the witch a mighty push, and she tumbled headfirst into the fire. Then Gretel set her brother free, and 2 of them hugged and danced. They filled their pockets with pearls and jewels from the witch's treasure and ran all the way home. There they found their father sitting at the kitchen table. His wife has died and he was all alone. Hansel and Gretel ran to him and hugged and kissed him. Then they emptied out their pockets until the table was covered in pearls and jewels. "We shall never be poor or hungry again," said Gretel. And the 3 of them lived together in perfect happiness. The end.